All right, good afternoon. Kevin Lawrence here. Really looking forward to this webinar today, talking about the next decade and your master plan for 2030. And we're going to have a bit of fun today. You know, 2020, everyone's excited about it. It's the new decade. And I know for myself, I'm really excited. It's a new decade and really a chance to think about the next 10 years. So 2020 is awesome. And 2030 is right behind it. Before we know it, we're going to be there. I actually thought about it. You know, I turned 50 this year. I'll actually be 60 in 2030. Yeah, so I think I heard somebody say 60 is the new 40, and I like the idea of that. So I'm hoping to feel just as energetic in my 60s as I am in my 40s. So we're going to talk about thinking about 2030, and then obviously, how do you have a great year this year? And at the end of the day, we know we got one life to live. Now, there's an opportunity for additional lives, and we hope that we come back and have them. We just don't know for sure, because we won't know it if we are actually living another life. Although some of you may, but I may not be that aware. But we want to make the most of this one life and make the most of this next decade. And our job as leaders is that we get lost in the clouds, and we got to keep looking up to what we want, because otherwise we can get buried and lost along the way. And there's all these amazing things we can do, and obviously problems we can get sucked into. So what we want to be able to do is have clarity and vision of where we're going and what we need to do, and stepping back to do some planning is a great way to do that. You know, recently in my keynotes, I've been talking a lot about this new model I built called the gravity of growth. And it's where performance and stress kind of come together to create amazing things. And the reality, at our best, at the top here, we've got the sweet spot. That's where we do our best work. Our highest performance comes at a reasonably high level of stress. And the challenge is that wherever we are today, we have to grow. That's why we have goals. We have goals to get better and to improve and make bigger things happen. So if your goals are 2 or 5 times where you are today, often you need capabilities or things to help you, 1, get there, and 2, stay there once you arrive. And when we talk about this, is basically building a bigger sweet spot, being able to handle a higher level of stress and create a higher level of performance. And this whole gravity of growth is, no matter where you get to, if you're not careful and aware, you know, the success will try and kill you. It'll throw you back down the left-hand side to push you down to smaller thinking, to be mediocre, because there's too much pressure or pain or whatever. Or, like me sometimes, you work so hard, you kind of slip down the other side to burnout or meltdown, where you almost self-destruct because you work so hard or don't recover enough. And all the ideas of everything I write about, teach about, is to help you stay up in that higher sweet spot and keep growing and evolving, not getting sucked into some of the pain along the way of the burnout and meltdown. And goal setting and planning is one of the key activities to help you stay there and stay sharp and not mess yourself up. And as you know, one of the lead quotes in my book is that there's no in between with leadership. Either it slowly destroys your life or forces you to get stronger. And I think that's a gift. I think it's a gift that we get put in these pressure situations and we're forced to learn and expand our capability so we can handle more and, usually ideally, have a better life. So there's lots of amazing people I've talked about in the book who have been very, very high-performing people, but some of these people have either burnt out or faded away. The stress of the achievement's been too much for them. And the same has happened in business and the clients you work with. Obviously, well-known people like Elon Musk and Travis from Uber, but CEOs I worked with who lost brain function. People that wanted to jump out of a perfectly good commercial aircraft because of panic attacks. CEO not being able to walk, all kinds of crazy stuff. The stress happens, and in reality, some of these high achievers thrive, others end up fading away because it becomes just too much. And again, how do you straighten yourself out? Well, you need to recalibrate by resetting your goals. Usually the thing is about taking care of yourself so you don't get too stressed out and burnt out. Again, we're just trying to avoid getting slammed down the slides, thinking small and mediocre on the left, or getting well done and a cooked brain on the right. And this whole thing of work-life balance that people talk about drives me crazy. It's such a sweet thing. But the problem is, for driven people like us, it ain't ever going to happen. And there's a missing part of the equation, which is you, because you're the person that holds it all together. Again, that's why today on the master plan, we want to pay attention to the column that's about you, so you're strong and resilient and happy and having a positive impact everywhere you go. And then you got this work and life that you've got to pay attention to and continue to nurture. But in our goal setting today, we're looking at all 3 of those, but starting with you. And then as the work and life get stronger and bigger and create more stress and pressure, yes, you get squished. But if you let it go too far, your commitment exceeds your capability, you have no time or energy left for you, and you wonder why things get a bit weird inside your head and you don't feel so good. So what we're trying to do is to figure out this 10% you need for yourself. And in that goal setting, 10% of your best energy at least goes to you to be a strong, resilient you. In the book, we've got the 4 drivers that you need to pay attention to stay strong and resilient. Your energy, your clarity, your team, and your growth. Breaks down into the 17 habits. It's in the book. You can look at it if you want. There's the assessment. If you haven't self-assessed or done it recently, oxygenassessment.com, where you can go and self-assess on the 17 habits in the book, which are based on those 4 drivers we talked about. And so if the leaders can't scale, the company won't grow. That's the root of it. That's why we're talking about your goal setting here today. At our firm, we want to help CEOs and leaders have it all: success in business and a rewarding life, and that ain't easy. The core values that we live by. We have experience all around the world working with lots of executives and companies. The main books we drive with is Scaling Up for Scaling the Business, Your Oxygen Mask for Scaling You and Building Your Resilience, and then Top Grading and Who for Scaling Your Team. We got a great team, but I want to dig right into habit number 17, plan, plan, plan again, as we get into this master plan for 2030. And we all think that getting to where we want to go is a nice straight line. It ain't. We know that. It's usually absolute chaos, sometimes pain and torture, and you get pulled all over the place. So the question in this chapter is, how disciplined are you at regularly planning and replanning for work, self, and life? Lots of us are good at planning, but are good at doing it in those 3 areas. And I find that most people have great work plans. They might have a health plan, and then they usually have a decent financial plan. But to have those 3 is pretty key. And my favorite quote from the great Sun Tzu in the book Art of War: victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then scramble trying to figure out how the heck to win. I ad-libbed that last part there. But the point is, having a clear plan up front helps you set priorities, and you're more likely to get where you want rather than just getting pulled by the tides. So the master plan is the solution that we found for this. And here's how you know it's important for you. You often have elaborate, long-winded plans that you don't look at. You aren't consistently achieving the goals that you want in those 3 areas. You get sidetracked by inspirations, or you're really strong in one area and not in the others. Again, it's not rocket science. So the question for you to consider is, where are you most likely to slip on your goals? On your goals at work, your goals for yourself, or your goals for your life? Just take a second and think about that. Which one are you most likely to slip on? For me, it's self. Because all the things I want to do in my life and with my kids and my family, and my commitment to my work, usually I'd be the one that would sacrifice. And it would show up in my sleep or my travel schedule, where I will, work like crazy and then fly home so I can be back at home, the same day, whatever it happens to be. My travel schedule sometimes is a bit crazy, but it works. But again, we all have an area we're strong and an area we're weak. By the way, if you want more details, if you want a copy of the audiobook or the workbook, you can go to lawrenceandco.com/O2, like oxygen. It's available for free. We just want to share these resources with people. The wonderful world of digital, where there's no cost and yet you can share a lot of value. So people always say, oh, I wish I had more time. I don't have time to do the things I need to do for myself. I don't have time to plan. I don't have time to set my goals. Well, the great news is you gave yourself the gift of time here. We have about another 50 minutes, and we're going to draft out a pretty good plan for the next 10 years. So let's just go right into. So the tools that we've set up in the book are this thing called an annual review, broken down into work, self, and life. It's a reflection, which we'll do in a minute. And then we have a master plan, which is, hey, what do we want the rest of our life to look like? And then we break it down to, okay, what are we going to do about it this quarter? And then at the end of the quarter, we reflect and go and reset the quarter. Again, not rocket science, goal setting basics. The key is it's work, self, and life, not just one dimension. And then you keep reflecting, repeating until you go back. At the end of the year, you reflect, which is what we're doing right now. So the truth of it all, as you know, is that winning requires the discipline to plan, plan, and plan again. You got to keep calibrating and tweaking things. And if you want to consistently get great results, you got to consistently have this discipline. which we all need. That's why our firm, we run a lot of quarterly planning sessions with companies. I was down in LA yesterday with one of my clients running our quarterly planning. So we refocus on what's most important after we've evaluated how we did and, and what we learned. So the annual review or the reflection, we're going to jump right into that. And we're going to give you 60 seconds per question to just go top level, the most important things that come to mind. We're not perfecting it here. We're just coming up with what were the top things so we have that content in our brain before we reset our focus. So first column is work, then self, then life. I recommend starting in the middle with you, but you can make up your own mind. So I'm going to set the timer for 60 seconds. What were your biggest wins or achievements in 2019? Go ahead and do it right now. So biggest achievements of 2019. Yourself is about you being happy, strong, healthy, resilient. Your life is your family, friends, and community. Work are things that make you money, your career, your job, your business, and investments. So biggest accomplishments. All right, on to the next question. What were your biggest frustrations, challenges, or disappointments? What were the pain points or things where it just wasn't the year you wanted? So take 60 seconds and go top of mind there. Again, starting with yourself. Some of you might not realize you'd be doing a whole bunch of work. Maybe you thought you'd be listening, but this is about doing the work and getting yourself crystal clear. And if you don't have all the templates, they're available on the site. And if you need them afterwards, just send us an email, we'll send them to you. But right now, you can just answer the questions. Okay. So the next question is, what were the biggest lessons from your mistakes? We all make mistakes. We all learn things. That's part of life. But what were the biggest things that you learned? You hit the wall and you learned a new thing from it. And again, and somehow you grow and become a better version of yourself. So take a second, your biggest lessons from your mistakes. So how did you get a little bit smarter? Okay. Next question is passion ratio. So if you haven't read the book, or I'll give you a quick refresher. If you have 100 units of your best energy in a week, how much of it did you dedicate to work, self, and life? Sometimes I have a week where my work will take 90% of my best energy. Well, then there's only 10% left for me to be strong, healthy, and resilient, and for my friends and family. Those usually don't work so well. That's usually when I'm traveling internationally or something. So if you look over the past year, how much of your best energy did you dedicate to work, self, and life? And then in retrospect, what would have been ideal? How much would have probably set you up for a better year? And again, we use this later when we're setting our goals to dedicate, to realize how much energy that we budget, almost like budgeting money. This is a different currency. So how did you do? And what would have been ideal? Take a minute and figure that out. None of this stuff is rocket science. It's basics. It's just taking the time to think it through and reset your brain. We've all got this intelligence inside of us. We're all brilliant. Sometimes we're just too busy to access it, or we don't have the right questions. So passion ratios, how did you allocate it? What would have been ideal? All right, the next question and the final question of reflection. If you had a magic wand and you could do that year over again, what would you do differently in work, self, and life? Again, starting with yourself. What would you do differently, knowing what you know now, knowing the passion ratio reflection, wins, insights, etc.? What would you do differently? Take a minute, make a note. So another 30 seconds. If you could do differently, what would you do different in terms of your work, for you and your own resilience and happiness, and in terms of your friends and family and community in your life? Awesome. So just take a second, just write down any final thoughts and we'll move on. So we've done the looking back. Now we're going to go switch to looking forward to this master plan, which is intended to be done once a year, which is, January is a great time. And the idea here is to think really big. What I want you to do here now is don't think logically, linearly, just think about what you really, really want to make happen. And if you think about this next decade, if it was the last 10 years of your life or the best 10 years of your life, how would you actually like it to be? And if you're already thinking big, I want you to think even bigger, like whatever is possible. This is a wild and wonderful life. We just have to have the right thoughts and goals in our mind. So this is the master plan, super simple. It just integrates all your planning into one spot. In the firms that we work with on strategic planning, we still have a detailed strategic plan for the business, but this is all about you. So I'll walk you through how the document works, and this is the entire document on one page. This top section is guiding principles. There are principles that you use to guide your overall thinking and your decisions. Below it is like the ultimate in your lifetime. So by the last breath, by the time you take your last breath, what do you want to look back and think and feel and believe? 2030, what do you want to be true for you in the year 2030, 10 years from now? What do you want to be true for you in 3 years from now? Like that's the next mountain you're going to climb. And then obviously this year. And we've broken down to the top 1 or 2 things in each of those timeframes to help you prioritize. Obviously you can't do a million things, but there's 1 or 2 things that really, really matter. So we're going to break you down and give you 90 seconds, again, just so you have time to think these through. And the first one we're not going to do today. This is an exercise, takes a bit more thinking, and you can dig into the book. Guiding values across the top would be like core values. Your sweet spot, That's where you do your best work. You love the work and you're good at it. And it gives you energy. That's chapter 4 of your oxygen mask if you want to go do those exercises. And then the next one is your always never list. And that's from chapter 13 in the book, is where you're teaching people to meet your standards. It's like the way you like to work and the way you like people around you to work, so that things work well for you. So we're not going to touch on those. We'll leave that for you to do later on if you'd like, but those are those guiding principles. The part I want you to think about is the ultimate in your lifetime. So at the end of your life, in work, self, and life, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to experience or enjoy? And then finally, what do you want to be remembered for? Recommend you start with yourself. Sometimes there's some duplication in the other areas, but we're going to give you 90 seconds right now just to think about those. And again, these have been in the back of your brain. We know that. But take 90 seconds and think about, at the end of your life, final breath, what do you want to be able to say in those categories, starting with yourself? If you've got any questions, just note it in the questions there. There's a spot for Q&A. If you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them by text or even answer them out loud as we go. I'll have a bit of time later for Q&A as well. All right, go ahead. Final breath, what do you want to be true? "30 seconds. These don't have to be perfect answers. But what do you want to achieve in each of those? To enjoy your experience, you call that feel. What do you want to be remembered for? Legacy. Okay, finish up your thoughts. And if you don't get it complete, it doesn't matter. We're just helping you get clear on some of the higher level things, and we're going to just chunk it down here today. So I've got one of my coaches, Nan O'Connor. She's a master certified coach and an absolute master. And she shared this with me last week. And it's a reflection exercise. And I want you to take a few minutes and do it right now. And here's, ask yourself, when you look back on my life and my business 10 years from now, what will have been the most fulfilling part of those years? What will I feel the proudest of accomplishing? And what will I regret not having done? So think about this in terms of work, self, and life, and make some notes. And I'll give you 90 seconds on this one as well. When you look back in your life 10 years from now, most fulfilling, proudest of accomplishing, and regret not having done. Go ahead and take some time and put some thought into that. I'm going to do a follow-up question as well. Most fulfilling, proudest of, and potentially regret. One of my big motivators in my life is to not sit back and say woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'd rather do the lessons and learn the hard way and not have a lot of regrets. I'm sure some of you are the same. So the next follow-up question that Nan had, looking forward over this next 10 years, what are the things that are the most worth trading my precious time for? What scares me, but if I do it, it'll take my life or myself and my health and my business to the next level? And what do I absolutely not want to miss out on? So make some notes about this. We're going to integrate this into your plan for the next decade. So most worth trading my time for, scares me, but it'll have a massive impact, don't want to miss out on. So take a minute, come up with your best thoughts. Whatever comes top of mind, try thinking in terms of work, self, and life. Okay, so there's some reflection around the next decade to get some fresh thoughts in your mind. And now what we want to do is to go into this thriving in 2030 column of the master plan. First, I want to think about your passion ratios. In 2030, how much of your best energy do you want going to work, self, and life? Right? What would be ideal for you? Are you still going to be putting 70, 80% into work? Or do you want work to be 30% of your best energy? And then think of self and life. So first of all, fill out the passion ratio. And then number two is, what is the number one outcome or the number one thing you want to achieve, whatever you want to call it. But the number one goal you have, and taking into account that reflection, taking into account the end of your life we talked about. So how much of your best energy in each area, work, self, life? And the number one thing you want to achieve or to be true. Take a minute and come up with your best top of mind thinking. All right, finish up your thinking there. So we've thought about this next decade, the single most important thing to happen. As you know, it's important to have one thing in each of those areas. If you've got too many things, you're going to get diluted and likely not achieve as much. Secondly, to figure out that single thing is hard. It's easy to have 7 priorities. It's very difficult to have one that is absolutely most meaningful. So that's 10 years from now. Let's go drop down to the next level. Twice as good in 3 years. So that's 2022. What do you want to be true in 2022? I'll give you a little bit longer on this one. So again, how much of your best energy do you want to allocate to work, self, and life in 2022? Right? Do you want 50% work, 25% self, 25% life, or 40% life, 40% work, and 20% self? It doesn't matter. It's personal. And then 2 goals in each category. 1 for sure, but you could have a second, but no more than that. So take that, and this is not rocket science, guys. We're just boiling it down to this next level. So by the time you get to December 31st of 2022, 3 years from now, 36 months from now, what do you want to be true? Passion ratio, how much energy is going into each, and secondly, top 2 goals. So take a run at that right now. Again, if you have any questions, just note them in the Q&A. Otherwise, we've got a Q&A section at the end. So what do you want things to look like so your world is twice as good in the next 3 years? Things that achieving or having come true will be the most impactful and have the biggest benefit for you or your family or for your work. Wrap up your thoughts there. And now we're going to drop into 2020. Again, pretty straightforward. What do you want to achieve this year? We start with our passion ratios again, because all we have is our energy, our best energy. We can show up and spend time doing something, but when you really have dedicated, focused energy on something, it makes a big difference. So 2020, how much of your best energy are you willing to allocate to work? How much of your best energy to self do you need to allocate to yourself? And then, and how much do you want to allocate to your life? Recommend starting with yourself. Most of us need 10, 15, 20% of our best energy to be our best, especially if you're still actively pushing hard at work. And in your life, it could be anywhere from 15 to 25% for most people. It ranges, and then again, work. But we don't want work to take it first, because work will probably take it all. So this year, how much energy in each, and what's your number one thing to achieve in each of those areas? Number one is all we really care about. If you feel like you need to have a second thing, there's room for it, but we try and stick to the number one. So take 90 seconds there. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Well, we'll go back one. So again, finish up your thoughts about this year, the single most important thing you need to achieve this year, and single most important thing to achieve this year, and then obviously the passion ratio, amount of energy you're going to dedicate to each. So finish up your thoughts there. Now, it's great to have annual goals, and as those of you that know me know that quarterly goals and quarterly focus is obviously the way to get more done. You've got four cram periods to get, to cram for the exam, so to say, instead of just one at the end of the year. And then obviously weekly goals, monthly goals help as well. But it's like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, said the great philosopher Mike Tyson. That's why we got to break down into little chunks and reset and recalibrate, because sometimes you got to zig or zag or go in a different direction. So that's why we have a plan for the quarter, and then a reflection for the quarter that we'll remind you of when we get to March as well this year. So now we're going to help you to break down this quarter. It gets a bit more tactical. It's a little bit harder to think about what you actually need to achieve in this short time period here. But we're going to just have you think the same questions, you guys. This is not rocket science. It's just a basic discipline to take the time, like you're giving yourself the gift of right now. So I want you to think about, in terms of your work, yourself, and your life, how much of your best energy are you going to dedicate this particular quarter? For me, this is a very busy work quarter, where the summer, it's a lot lighter. And then your number one project for the quarter. If you have other goals, there is room for 2 other goals in each of those categories of work, self, and life. So, and then I would like you just to use the left-hand side of the dotted line. I'll explain that on the next slide after we finish this activity. So, number one thing you want to achieve in work, self, and life, 2 or 3 if you need them, and then starting off with your passion ratios and how much basically you're going to invest in each of those areas. So take 2 minutes and really think this through. I want you to really get this clear, and obviously a smart, tangible goal. I mean, a goal with an outcome, not like I'm going to work on my health. Yeah, great. You know, maybe it's that you're going to work out 3 times a week, or you're going to attend 25 yoga classes, or it's a weight goal or a blood pressure goal. Who knows, whatever that is in your world, but tangible outcome, not just I'm going to work harder to be healthy. Let's get clear on what that looks like. So take a couple minutes, do this. Again, any questions, raise your hand or put it in the Q&A there. So remember, this is the stuff that matters absolutely most. It's not your biggest problem. It's usually the biggest opportunity that will move you ahead closer to what you want in 2020 and 2022 and 2030. And by the time you take your last breath on the planet, the things that really make the biggest difference. The hardest part sometimes is we get caught in fires and problems and a problem mindset. And fixing problems doesn't usually move you ahead. It stabilizes you. But we're looking for the things that really make a difference. So I give you another 20, 30 seconds to be crystal clear on the tangible outcome, the really clear outcome-oriented goal for work, self, and life. Then I'll explain the dotted line. So the dotted line, you know, it was interesting. One of the keynotes I've been, you know, this last year I did a ton of speaking, you know, Australia, India, Middle East, all throughout the US. Yeah, it was awesome. Actually, even Europe. I was the year before. So, but one of the people in my audience said, "Hey, Kevin, you know, you've got this book called Your Oxygen Mask First, where it's, you know, taking better care of yourself, and you're telling me to set goals, take better care of myself. So you're telling me to go home to my spouse and say, hey, I listened to this great coach, and he says I need to take way better care of myself, and I got to do more things for me." He goes, "That's not going to go very well." And as we were brainstorming about it, we came up with this idea, which is putting this red dotted line down the self column, which is mine and yours. So for him, he goes, if I go to my wife and say, hey, he said, I've got to figure out what I need to do for myself, and that we should figure out what you need to do for yourself so we can both be stronger and more resilient. I go, hey man, that's a great idea. That's a heck of a lot better idea than the way he was initially going to present it. So we built it into everything that we do. So whether it's your spouse, your business partner, your best friend, it doesn't matter, but somebody important to you in your life, if you get clear on what you want and what they want, you can support each other, and then you take it from what's perceived as a selfish act to actually a supportive or a generous act, because you're trying to help each other get what they need. So on this, you can take a guess at what's important to that other important person in your life, or better yet, talk to them. But the idea is on your goals to have that in front of you so that you can be conscious of it and support them in a way. Just a little side note though, for most people, holding their spouse or their close friend or a partner accountable can be really, really dangerous territory. So I'm not recommending you do that. That's, you know, if you can pull it off in your world, good for you. But for most people, it's a supportive and a respectful and trying to make space for both of you to get what you need to be at your best. So the next section down below is what we call TOADS, habits and stops. So TOADS are things that you procrastinate, the little lingering things that build up. It'll be clutter in your world. It'll be things that you get lost in and they build up. And it can be, you know, I've got a pile of books in front of me in my office I haven't got through reading all of. I mean, I prefer to listen to them, so why I still have too many books based on paper, I don't know. It's a whole other thing. But what are the lingering loose ends? It could be, you know, I need to get my ice machine fixed. It could be a scratch on your car, a loose molding in your bathroom, something that's not right on your computer, something you borrowed, something you need to borrow. It could be will, doctor, dentist, optometrist, a myriad of different things. So there's these lingering things you just keep thinking about. They're low value. They're not going to change the world, but they create a mental strain and you keep thinking about them. So I'd like you to start. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to think about the biggest toads. You might have more than two. Most people have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 of these things. But the top 2 or 3 of these lingering things that weigh on you, make you feel awkward, guilty, whatever it is. So take a couple of seconds right now. I'm going to give you 60 seconds and go and think about those biggest toads that are lingering and burning up mental energy that you would love to get out of the way. And if it's more than 2, that's cool. Toads, procrastinating things, loose ends, incomplete projects, you name it. Remember a guy I used to work with as a kid. I tried being a mechanic for a while. It wasn't a great choice, although I love cars. Working on them is not a skill that I'm good at. I remember a guy, Art, this guy was a mechanic, and every day before he left work, he'd roll up to the air pump up his flat tire and go home. And one day I said to Art, what's going on? Why don't you just fix the tire? You work in a tire shop. The equipment's here. Why don't you fix it? He looks at me kind of funny. He goes, but Kevin, it's only flat on the bottom. And I'm like, what? And then he laughed and he went away. But we have these things where we have these weird rationalizations or justifications, but these toads are a big deal. There's a whole chapter on it in the book. Next thing I want you to think about is the habit to start or stop. So what is it that you want to start or stop doing? Like, one of the things that I am going to start and really lock down, my #1 thing for this year in terms of a habit, is that hour every morning for myself. Time to write, work out, meditate, journal, look at affirmations, visualization. There's a great book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod that I really like the way he put it together in a nice, simple system. And it ties back into the resilience rituals that I write about in my book. It's that daily routine. But that's the habit I'm going to start. And the stop, I'm still contemplating a couple of different options. But what do you need to start and or stop doing in terms of a habit to really enhance your world? Take 60 seconds and think about that right now. The most important habit to start or stop. And you can go back into the habits in your oxygen mask first and take a look at those 17 as a prompt. But there might be one of those. It could be giving people better feedback. It could be asking for feedback. It could be stretching yourself. It could be reading or learning more. There's a lot of different things that it could be, but think about that habit that's going to make the biggest difference. You know, 30 seconds and finish up your thoughts there. And we're almost done. Imagine this whole plan for your entire life in less than an hour. Isn't that awesome? Or at least a good solid draft of it. So habit to start or restart, which is the case for a lot of us, and or stop. What do you want to stop doing in your world? I like to stop email. I just haven't figured out how to make that happen. It would be nice though. If anyone's got a solution for that, let me know. And finally, where the rubber hits the road. Today, I believe, is Wednesday. It is Wednesday. So there's 2.5 more solid days of the work week, plus a couple more days on the weekend. So you've got some great goals you've boiled down to for the quarter, and there's no time like the present. So if you were to really build up a lot of momentum today, like an airplane taking off full throttle down that runway, what are some tangible actions you could take this week for your key goals around work, self, or life? It could be someone you reach out for help. It could be getting a book, calling your coach or your mentor or your advisor, brainstorming with a team member, building an action list. I don't know what it is, but how do you jumpstart on those goals this week before this stuff starts to fade into the background a little bit? So take a minute and basically make an action list of different things that you will or could do by the end of the week. Take a minute, do that right now. It's real simple, but this is the disciplines of achievement as we know. All right, we're coming into the home stretch. So what actions can you take this week? And I really encourage you to take twice the action you would normally think about taking to really power through and get some momentum going right away. None of this stuff is rocket science. It's about dedicating the time and energy, which we know is hard because we get distracted by the fires and the problems and other people's problems. So the thing I want to leave you with on is there's this guy named Mr. Productivity, and some of you may recognize this guy. He's actually very well known if you've read books like Think and Grow Rich. But Charles Schwab, back almost 100 years ago, asked Ivy Lee to come in and help him figure out how to make his executives more productive in his businesses. And Ivy went through at that point in time and came up with an insanely simple solution, which I have a slight tweak on. But his solution back then, the story is it took him 15 minutes, maybe an hour. And then he said to Charles Schwab, pay me whatever you think it's worth. And he got paid equivalent of about $400,000 Canadian in today's dollars, if you build in the inflation over time. An incredible amount of money. And he had the simplest solution ever. And although this solution is so simple, it's kindergarten simple, I will tell you that when I do it, I have more productive days and weeks, no two ways about it. And not many people have this discipline. It's insanely simple and incredibly powerful. And this is it. What Ivy Lee called it the Daily Six. Make a list of the 6 most important things you need to do tomorrow before you leave your day. Now, this is the day before Post-it notes, but write it down. 6 most important things. Now, if you go back and read the chapter on toads in my book, I say always start your day with your biggest toad. Start with the ugliest thing that you're going to do that's probably going to drain and suck your energy because you're not looking forward to doing it. But basically, make a list of those 6 most important things. Start at number 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the way that we work today, it's very hard to get through these things because constant distractions for lots of us. So my modification is put the toad up top because that will give you the biggest energy boost, getting it out of the way. And then go through those top priorities. At the end of the day, if you didn't get them all done, you transfer them to the tomorrow's list and you reprioritize in order of importance tomorrow. For a lot of people, the reason they don't achieve what they want is they get caught up in stuff that's interesting or urgent or has a lot of drama, but it actually might not be important. And to jam through the highest impact things first is an incredible discipline. Here's a very, very simple way to do it. So any questions? I'll open up. If you have any questions right now, there's a Q&A tab on the bottom. We've got a couple of minutes. We're right on time here. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any. Or you can actually raise your hand, and I will gladly do that. And if there's not, that's cool. We can wrap up and actually be ahead of time, which I love to do, although it's rare. So final thoughts for you. Your achievements will be greater and you'll enjoy your life more if you make proper planning and replanning a real discipline for you, like we're doing right now and updating it every quarter. Because the work stuff, there's mechanisms to ensure we achieve most of that, unless you're the CEO or owner. But on self and life, it's easier for things to get loose and lost along the way. And our job is to stay clearly with our head above the clouds, looking at what's important and keeping our eye on the prize and not getting lost. And keeping in mind the gravity of growth with the stress and pressure of what we're doing. Hey, it's awesome and it's a lot of fun. But if we're not paying attention and on our game, we can get slammed down to mediocrity on the left or pushed over to burnout on the right. And every time you reset your goals every quarter is a chance to recalibrate and keep yourself up in that sweet spot before you can slip too far one way or the other. And some amazing high-performing people kind of faded away and got lost in this path of achievement. And the key element is taking care of ourselves and knowing what we need to do to be our best, our strongest, and our most inspired. And planning is one of the best ways. Take this less than an hour every quarter to reflect and reset yourself. Obviously, do it with your team. If you want some help doing it with your team, let us know. We can run a webinar like this for your team and customize it for you. We've got all the madness of what's going on around us and the few things that matter. And we also got to think bigger, because sometimes we can get lost in the problems and stuff and not really think about what we want. And in our life, and for people important to us, having clear plans every quarter for work, self, and life, and with the self, mine and yours, for yourself and that most important person in your world, so you can help them be stronger and more resilient with you. And finally, what are your top priorities so you actually get things done? So, action plan. This is where the rubber meets the road. We've talked about a lot of stuff here. What's your number one action and the number one thing you're going to stop doing? Just take a second and make a note. You've got a whole bunch of ideas floating in your head, but channel down, you got a plan. The number one action you're going to take today, and number one thing you're going to commit to stop doing. Let's take a second and think about that. So final story. Going back, gosh, it's going to get close to 20 years ago when my sister was getting married. We're at the wedding reception, and one of her friends comes over and says, "Hey, do you know who that lady is over there?" My sister goes, yeah, that's my Auntie Grace. And my Auntie Grace looked like this lady here, elegant, you know, dressed for the event. And my sister's friend goes, "Oh, okay, good. Because I know her." And my sister goes, "Well, what do you mean you know her?" She goes, "Well, she's on our list." And my sister goes, "What list?" She goes, "Well, my family owns a bunch of heritage houses in a city called New Westminster where they hold a lot of weddings and special events. And it turned out that my Auntie Grace was on the list of wedding crashers. That my Auntie Grace in her 80s and early 90s would get dressed up on the weekends in her Sunday best, just like this lady in the picture here, and go and attend these weddings and have a great time and have a free lunch or dinner too." And of course, we never knew about this. Auntie Grace never told us. She was this amazing spirit, and into her 90s was living life large and crashing weddings along the way too, which was pretty awesome. And this reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by the crazy, inspired, and almost mad Hunter Thompson, is that life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." And so my hope is for you, and for me and everyone else around us, is that when we get to 2030 or the end of our life, hopefully, you know, we're 150 years old by then, but we can look back at our life and go, "You know what? I took really good care of myself. That's why I'm still here. I achieved all these things I wanted to in my work, and I feel wonderful about that. And in my life, I lived a great life and feel that I did an excellent job of it." And you can look back and go, "Wow, what a ride." So have a great day. Have a great 2020. Let's drive hard to making this year amazing, and 2030 something that we can all celebrate and say, "Wow, what a ride." Have a great day.